Hello. Welcome, everyone. Thanks, Philippe. It's not working. Okay, so we'll just start with the land acknowledgement. An important step in reconciliation is the acknowledgement of traditional treaty land and recognition for the people of the territory. I'd like to acknowledge that we're currently on the traditional territory of the Kwanlin Dun First Nation and the Tean Kwacha'an Council. I really apologize if I got that wrong. I'm really sorry if I did, but I did the best. The city of Edmonton also would like to acknowledge that the traditional land on which it resides, which is Treaty 6 territory and the traditional Métis homelands of Region 4. Next slide. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I am Stephen Nachtegaele. Basically, this slide will be the bio that Philippe just gave. I am the Open Data Team Lead for the City of Edmonton. As mentioned, I joined the city in 2012 to work the elections and census. And part of that is providing data to Open Data. Some of the bigger data sets that we have are election reporting and census. I joined the Open Data team to help grow the catalog in 2015. There's a big push in 2015 to grow the catalog. I left in 2016 to build the internal data portal, which the question was asked, if it's so easy to get data to the public, why is it so difficult to get data to other employees? So we created the internal data portal, which is built purely on the success of the open data portal of the City of Edmonton. And then I rejoined the previous open data team, went to other opportunities in the City of Edmonton. You may have met Scott or Bill, but they left to other opportunities. So I rejoined in late 2019, early 2020 as lead. And my focus since rejoining has been focusing on the usability, user friendliness, just building out a better open data catalog. Next slide, please. Just kind of a bit about our journey. In 2010, the city launched its open data platform with 12 data sets. I think most of those were like location of fire halls, location of rec centers, very basic data sets. We launched the citizen dashboard, which is kind of statistics reporting, performance monitoring. In 2013, we developed our Open City Initiative in 2014. In 2015, we actually made an Open City policy, open data policy. It was passed by council. The creation of the Open Data Advisory Group occurred in 2015, which was comprised of a rep from FOIP, a rep from legal, as well as reps from each city department. That process still happens today. We've added data ethics, which is a whole thing that's difficult and interesting and just, it's hard to grapple. And I believe our ethics advisor is giving a lightning talk tomorrow. I highly recommend joining it. It's 15 minutes, but it's just fascinating stuff and super difficult to implement. But that group still meets today. Everything that we put on the open data catalog gets eyes on from FOIP, legal, and data ethics. We released our open data strategy in 2017, in January 2017, and adopted the International Open Data Charter in March 2017. We created the advisory group also in 2017, the Open Data Citizen Advisory Group in 2017, just to get citizen perspectives on data release, identification, and prioritization. Unfortunately, a lot of that kind of fell on the wayside due to COVID. It's really difficult to get out there and meet people when everyone's in lockdown. We're slowly starting to ramp that back up. Haven't quite gotten to where we were when COVID hit. There's a bigger gap between 2017 and 2020. They're just focusing on building the catalog. They won a few awards in there, but I can't take credit for any of that. I wasn't on the team then. Some of those awards being the Open City Index is one of the more open cities in Canada. And then when I joined in 2020 and on, we're focusing on open data refinement. So really refining the catalog. And not only that, we're starting to bring in a corporate data governance model. So we want to align with that. So metadata and stewardship and things, questions of those like, which are really trying to align to that. With that maturity though, so now that we're mature, we don't necessarily need to focus on building the catalog. We don't need to focus on throwing more and more data sets out the catalog. We also have buy-in from our business areas in the city of Edmonton. Open data is a thing. Councillors request, they say, let's get this information out there. Let's put it on open data. We don't need to do that groundwork, that getting that information. People know who open data is. But now all that data is out there. We need to work on refinement. We need to make the data that's out there better. We need to make it easier to use. So we're focusing on data quality, user experience, and ultimately we're trying to define who our target audience is. There's two types of audiences we're focusing on, and I mean, there's a massive blend between the two. So there's purely non-technical users, and then there's developer-centric. There's obviously a wide range of blends between the two, but generally we're trying to focus on defining who our audience is. And part of that comes from, we're frequently asked questions in our day-to-day saying, what does this data mean? Or where can I find this data? And it's stuff that is out there, but it just may not be easy to put two and two together. It might be not easy to join tables, or you might need that knowledge or know-how. So who do we mean by non-technical users? Non-technical users are individual users who don't necessarily have the technical ability. And by technical ability, I mean the technical skills or the tools, because some of the tools are expensive, or even the interest. Some people may have the skills and the tools, they just don't want to. They just would rather see it kind of in a user-friendly way. To join tables, synthesize massive amounts of information, or just looking for simple answers to their normal questions. Normal being not big data analytical questions like what's the average time of building permits over 3 years, but they want to know when's the last time my bus comes to near my house. They want to know why can't I see my rental unit in the list of legal secondary suites, or how can I tell what my council voted for or against? All those require currently joining multiple tables together, or in this the example of where's my secondary suite, the data was there. It was just more of a training aspect, and like we need to teach them how to do the filtering on the tool and how to use the tool that we have. And in an informational versus analytical kind of scale, it's more leaning on the informational side. For developer-centric, who we mean is the individual users who have the technical ability, the know-how, the tools, and the interest of doing so, to join tables, synthesize some amounts of information, and maybe looking to do detailed analysis on how or why things happen, or even to just create an application on the data that exists. Someone might be looking at what percentage of transit is on time or late over a 3-year period. Is it the same routes every time? Is it the same times every time? Is it weather dependent? Things like that. They may want to build a transit application. We have a number of awesome things built. I think Transit 55 uses the real-time location of buses. It's really cool to see. And we do City Hall School, and it's really interesting for the kids to see. They can see the buses that they take, and whether they're on time and they're late. Another thing, and Eugene here, Dark Horse Analytics, did This Is YEG, a fantastic, it's an amazing thing. But like how the city has grown and the census information, they've done great things with the data. And I actually said that to him earlier. It's awesome what people can do with the data. So we have to put it out there, and that's who we mean by developer centric. So to build the needs of the non-technical users, we can build tables containing English or human readable text, containing all the information in one location, so they don't need to do table joins. Alternatively, we can do actual visualizations that build on that raw data. So you can take a quick glance at it, take a quick look, and you can easily synthesize a lot of that data, add filters, and make it really easy for people to drill down into just the information that they're looking for. And all that said, there are different levels to user friendliness, right? There is the singular table that has all the information that they need. There's also the visualization that explains everything. So there's a wide range of user friendliness. The benefits to all of this are it's human readable. So you don't need special tools to understand it beyond maybe understanding of spreadsheets. It's user friendly in that a singular data set tells an entire story. You don't need to join multiple data sets together to get the full story. The story exists on a single data set. Drawbacks to it, unfortunately it does increase maintenance. So increased maintenance, and it does take more resourcing to build all these visualizations. So the open data team right now at the City of Edmonton is 1.75 full-time employees. So a lot of that is taken up just on maintaining that. There's not a ton of time in building visualizations. We do have a data storyteller team that does a lot of work, a lot of good work, both internally and externally. But again, building this user friendliness does have some capacity needs. Benefits of building towards developers. So to meet the needs of the technical users, we release the data in a more normalized manner. And normalized just means reduced duplication of data. So you have IDs, you can do the joins, and to meet those needs, we also define the joins clearly. Lots of good metadata, and we define how often things are refreshed. The benefits of this are we reduce the duplication of data, which reduces maintenance, database size. An example I keep going back to, and I kind of try to get it shown on here, is neighborhood name. So in our open data catalog, we have neighborhood name probably like 200 times. And it's in all sorts of formats, uppercase, lowercase, title case. Some data sets may be out of date. A neighborhood name changes. That can all be easily handled with the normalized kind of system where we have one table where we have the neighborhood name and then IDs. Reduced size means quicker retrieval, and then you only pull the data that's necessary. You don't need to pull everything and do some filtering out. That all just means it's easier to integrate into applications or visualizations. As maintainers, we benefit because we don't need to maintain. We don't need to update 200 different locations. We can update one, and that propagates out. And there's less likely to be inconsistencies across all of our data. And doing this, we let the web developers and app developers build the stuff that is understandable to the non-technical users. They build that really useful one snapshot information that gets out there. Drawbacks are you need to understand the joins. You need to understand the kind of the relationships to answer a query. Tables contain codes. So a non-technical user opens up a table and they'll see, well, neighborhood is 1456. That means nothing to them unless they know that they have to go to the neighborhood table, find it, do that join. Frequently, they don't know what it means. So they send us an email. And then one of the big drawbacks is there's no single location to where those things that are built for end users exist. So we have part of open data is machine readable, but anonymous, free to use. We don't know who uses our data. We don't know what they use it for. That's fine. We don't need to know, but it makes it very difficult unless they tell us what they're using it for to let people know that there's been a tool built that can answer this question. That makes it super user friendly. Unless we know who's built the tool, or sorry, unless they tell us that they built the tool, we can't point anyone there. And some really cool tools, we do feature stories and we'll point people. So if you built anything using our data, let us know. We'll send people there, but we don't know, like we can't go out and crawl the internet and figure out those things just because of the anonymous use. We don't even require people to log in to get the data. So it makes it very difficult. So to kind of recap, if we focus on non-developer users or non-technical users, pros are it's human readable. You don't need special tools. Data sets tell a whole story in and of themselves. Unfortunately, it requires more maintenance and more resourcing to build visualizations. If we focus on developers centric, it's easier to maintain. There's fewer inconsistencies. We only pull data that's needed. You only pull data that's needed, quicker access, smaller data size. But you do need tools and abilities to do that. And there's no single location that we can point users to the end, like to those applications. What did we choose? And now, before I say anything, this is not like we're not picking one or the other. It's a wide range. It's a scale. The data is getting out there regardless. But if we are to pick where we're going to focus on, we are leaning towards the non-technical users right now. We have been pretty dev focused to this point, but we're starting to go that way just to answer those questions. It is increased work, but ultimately we feel it's more in line with like assisting the general public has been more in line with our mandate. As the city of Edmonton, we're trying to get that information out to as many people as possible. One of our colleagues pointed out quite eloquently that can you really say you're open and transparent if the general public doesn't understand it? And I thought that line was awesome. And I told her I'm putting it in my presentation. One goal may be to try to bring up the technical ability of end users. So we do have some user videos. We've talked about adding some more user videos. We talked about maybe having some technical talks, like maybe we open ourselves up for a little bit during the week and answer some of those technical questions about using the tool. But it also comes down to equity of use. So a big thing, specifically when we're bringing in the data ethics, just because data is accessible doesn't mean it's equitably available. The more understandable we make it to a wider range of people, the more within our mandate it meets. But all that said, coming to this last slide here, I'd like to make this kind of a discussion. What we're doing may not be the right approach. Well, it may be right for us, but it might not be right for everyone. But I'm very interested in seeing what other people are doing. I will steal ideas. I will take good ideas and I will implement them. I've done things I've taken from Winnipeg and Toronto, have data quality metrics that is awesome. And I'm taking those and I'm implementing those. Ottawa and Calgary have done a neighborhood equity tools that I am fully on board with, and I'm trying to convince the right people in the city of Edmonton to get behind. So does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any discussion? Like, what do you guys do? What do you feel like we should be doing?
We have a mic here for questions, just so people online can hear.
Good morning, Ed. It's Paul from Vector Research here in Whitehorse. Thanks for your talk. It was great. It's sounding like you're fairly far ahead on the data structuring, warehousing piece. I'm wondering about the analytics part of it and if you're providing support, self-serve, so Click or Power BI, Tableau, if that's part of where you're at.
Internally to the city, we use Tableau. We also have a data science team. There's a number of individuals, I think 3 or 4. I think they use R, Python. They use a whole suite of tools that's up there, and I'm not necessarily sure what they're doing. They're doing great work, and the end result is amazing. But technically, how they're doing it, I'm not 100% sure. We don't necessarily offer assistance, so we're kind of tool agnostic. We put the data out there. Whatever tool you want to use that, whatever works best for you. But we also don't have the skill set to I guess offer help in specific tools. If someone has a Tableau question, we might be able to give some assistance, but generally not. No. That's kind of, we might get overwhelmed and kind of in some of those technical discussions where there might be better people to answer that. Like Tableau might be better handled to answer some of those questions. Because if someone were asking me a Power BI question, I may be able to point them in the right general direction. But I've used Power BI for all of 15 minutes. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but. Yeah.
Hi there, I'm with the government of Yukon. And I was just curious how you guys decided which sort of areas to focus on first in terms of taking that data and creating the data visualizations for citizens who just might not be that technical.
If we get frequent requests for specific data sets, that kind of indicates to us that there's interest in that specific area. Some things I think we find, some things are, we think this is interesting, we think it would be interesting, we put it out there. So we're kind of proactive in that. Other things are, we're constantly getting questions. So maybe we need to create a visualization or create a good example would be the transit one. So we got this person's like, I can't figure out for the life of me when the last stop near my bus, like, when is the last stop near my house? And so we tried to walk this person through, well, we have, that information exists in like these 3 different tables. And they're like, I just want to click in one place, search for my address and get the answer, right? And I mean, we can point them to the Transit 55 web app or that. But ultimately, when you're searching for City of Edmonton Transit, chances are you're coming across the open data catalog. Why can't that catalog answer that question, right? And it's that specific one it was pretty easy for us to just in our nightly processing add an additional table to do that join using our automated system and just publish it. So that took very little effort on our part. Answers the citizen question. But generally what we're doing is based on what we're asked.
Yeah, hi, I'm Josh from the Open Data Institute. We do a lot of research into a concept we call open cities. And a big part of that is obviously publishing open data and also having that sort of citizen engagement. So, getting into both the non-technical and technical audiences. So I'm really curious if you had like $1 million to invest in a project to understand the audience, your audiences better. What would you do? What would your next steps would be?
$1 million?
As much as you want.
Well, and I can't write myself a bonus check, right? Well, and actually, an interesting thing we're doing right now is the Google has the user user personas thing, and we have an intern in right now doing kind of some of that persona thing. I would probably spend some money and find out really dig into who's using it and for what. Because it's open data, it is kind of a black box. We have some stats. We know who's accessing which data sets, how, like, historically, how they've been accessed within the last month, how they've been accessed. And then I guess we also know whether they're being viewed or API access. But really spending some time to dig in and find out who's using it and for what reasons. Because that I guess would really help us drive where we want to focus our efforts on. And ultimately we want to have that user experience to be best for, like, and a good example for this is it mainly developers? If it's 99% developers that are using the open data portal, maybe we, a lot of those visualizations are nice to have, but we should really focus on keeping that data normalized and lean and things like that, right? But we can only go off of what we receive emails on. That's kind of our insight, and most of our insight in that vein is why isn't this there, or so things along those lines.
We have an online question from Lorna Brown. Does your view of equity include more than English language?
Yes. Yes, but I don't have the ability. So yes, but then our question comes down to resourcing. So equity comes down to access for all, right? And so there is the official French language in Canada, but there's other languages. Do we have that ability? Not right now, not with the capacity we have, or not with the resourcing, not with the resourcing we have. Is that something we could look at doing? I would hope so. I really hope so. That's a tough one. I mean, that's something I'm going to jot down though.
Thank you.
I'm going to look into that. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Emilia. I work with the government of the Yukon too. And you mentioned 2 types of users, the developers and the non-technical. My question is more, you don't seem to really know who are your users, but how do you promote the open data website, the open data of Edmonton to the non-technical users? Because developers are going to know about it, but what about the other ones?
Yeah, and I mean, we have a Twitter feed that does some highlights some of the data sets we publish. We do some work with Edmonton.ca. So we don't like have a big advertising piece. Frequently though, Google is a huge thing. So people ask a question about the city of Edmonton and the open data portal pops up a lot in those Google searches. I guess that's what drives probably the vast majority of our non-technical users.
Thank you. We have another online question from Pauline Chauvet asking, have you tried tools like pop-up ratings or forms to get into satisfaction level from users? And if yes, have they been useful?
Sorry, and if yes.
Have they been useful tools?
Yeah, well, we haven't done, I guess, I think they've done a satisfaction survey with users. The biggest thing we've done is the citizen advisory board. But like I said, that's kind of been dormant since, I can't remember the last time they met. I think it was before me, which has been, so then it's been dormant for a fair while. No, we have discussed it. So we did kind of a user experience analysis where we sat down, we brought people in the city, but not from our team, to kind of take a quick look at the catalog and, where are some quick things that we can fix. A lot of it is, though, we are vendor based, so we have the vendor that has kind of the same look and feel. But that is probably something that's valuable.
So, sorry, I have maybe just an extra point to add to the question, might help with stir some of the conversations here, but I'm from the city of it. Well, I'm from Edmonton. I'm not a government member by any means, but I've used their open data portal multiple times. There are two things that are relevant to this conversation. One, there is an online site of various Tableau dashboards that are available to answer a bunch of questions. So there is a site specific to just learning about the data in a way that's more accessible. The second thing that I found really novel with the site is many times whenever you go to open data portals, it's just the data set. Maybe you'll see the table or something, but often with the city of Edmonton's data, you go to, let's say you go through a Google link, you look for religious data or something like that, whatever it is. And then there is not only the data itself, but often a Tableau output that's linked to that data that's up at front and center. So there's a more accessible way to get to understanding that data without diving into the tables. So I found that I've seen other data portals and most of it is just straight data, right? Whereas often many of the bigger or more well-used data sets for the city's portal has that link to this, it has an image of the visualization itself that you can click to get the insights without getting into the data.
Sorry. And that's a good point. Those are typically dashboards built by employees, but a lot of them from our data storytellers. And yeah, if we know people like a data set is popular and we know that a visualization exists, we will pop it. We have the ability to kind of pop a featured story, they're called, on that data that directs people to the visualization. But it comes back to, we don't always know what's out there, right? The more we know, though, the more we can help.
Yeah, two things. I'm trying to organize my thoughts here. So the first thing is wondering, like, how do we make data more enticing to people or wanting them to engage with it? And the idea that comes to mind for me is Sean Boots, who's here, recently released a report that he did that is incredibly fascinating. But the headline is government is overspending money. And that's something that pulls you in. Well, let me move. The headline is government is overspending $10 billion of money every single year. That's a headline that pulls you in. As a person who pays taxes, I'm and it pulls you in. And then I know that's challenging for people working in government to be so provocative with their data, open data, but it's something that how do you pull people into a narrative of why this data should be something that's interesting to them?
When you find out, let me know.
Yeah, and I should be clear, Sean Boots was able to do that because he was taking leave from government and actually working with academic. And he'll tell you there's been blowback from that experience. So, oh, you're right here. Hey, Sean. So maybe not necessarily the best, but the key thing is, how do you make people interested about your data? And I should say, I added the tagline of the $10 billion. It is a good tagline though.
It's a great question. How do you make data interesting? And considering adding this to the presentation, but I don't have it handy. There's a picture that we use when we go to City Hall School. City Hall School is just where we talk to like anywhere from elementary schools, so grade 6s, grade 3s. But there's this picture of it's got 4 squares and it's got, in the top left corner, it's got the ingredients. So it's got like eggs and flour and that's data, and it's boring. It's technically edible, but like it doesn't really do anything. And then the next picture is a cake, but it's just a plain cake. I mean, that's information. It's the data put together in a manner that's more edible, more pleasing, but not quite there. And then the third picture is it's all frosted and it looks good and it looks amazing and tasty. That's your visualizations, right? That's taking that information, taking that data, and actually building something that is appealing to people. And then the last square is an empty plate with crumbs. And that's the knowledge, right? You consume the cake, but it's a great image and it kind of highlights that. How do you get people interested in that data? And I think it is those visualizations, right?
I mean, I would say like, visualizations, awesome, but I don't think it's the only way. Like,
No,
Sean, I don't think you have any visualizations with your data that you've released. Bunch of tables, but I've read those tables because I was very curious to know where the money is going. So I think visualization is really good and a huge advocate for it, but I think there's other ways of doing it as well in terms of stories we wrap around the data.
Yep. The other thing we have to keep in mind though is we don't put bias when we're like in some of our tables. And I should have mentioned that, like, one of the difficult things about combining tables is unintentionally adding bias and highlighting things. And I know our elections office leading up to the election, we couldn't necessarily build out certain data sets that linked tables. And it's not because the data is all there, but you don't want to be seen to be given unintentional bias to anything, right?
Well, and then maybe this is where other groups, like I'm thinking Eugene, the work that you did, you were able to build narratives and stories around the data that was pulled. So maybe it's not just on government. This is where other groups can pull in and help provide stories around it. The other thing I want to quickly say, and I recognize we're probably going a bit over time, aren't we? Eugene's giving me I'm getting the eyeballs, but I wanted to quickly say, and this is, putting someone else on the spot in the room, David here. We had a chat just the other day, and one of the things that really stood out for me was the fact that David Howe, I guess, he was working on a data set for Open Parliament and had started paying attention, like he'd been working on it for a bit, but then got pulled away to other things. And then someone's like, I love your data set. What's going on with it? And he's like, oh, wow, right. And so he started paying attention to it again. And I wonder if what are there ways that we can sort of celebrate and provide positive feedback for the people who are using the open data sets to reinforce and re-energize them to keep using those data sets?
Yes.
But I've been saying,
you're asking great questions. And, yeah, I mean, and ultimately, thanks everyone for coming. We have hit probably the hard cutoff. So go eat, have fun.